to this, and this of course is those of you that saw my last video, this is the video I'm going to do on little MMA stuff here, and what I wanted to talk about. First, let me talk about a question I've been getting by a lot of people. Did I see the last UFC pay-per-view? Yes, I've seen it. My thoughts on it, and I don't like reviewing MMA pay-per-views because a lot of it hinges on, you put two guys together and they're having good fights. I wasn't too big on the undercard, and I was kind of sad to hear that the prelims that were not on the UFC, that were not on the pay-per-view, actually apparently were better fights than what was on the undercard of the pay-per-view. Although we did have a very good match on the undercard, and the main event was excellent, in my opinion. It was one of those matches where both the casual MMA fan and the die-hard MMA fan both could look at it and go, wow, that was really good. And that's the type of match that I think helps the sport aspect of it, probably not so much money-wise sometimes, but the sport aspect of it more than anything else, when you have a good fight that both fan groups can look at and go, wow, I might want to see that again. So I thought that was really good. I thought Griffin won just watching it, though I think it was pretty much a pick-em fight. It would depend very much on how you scored it, and once you get into scoring, that's all very subjective. Though I will say this, and one thing when I get more into what I'm about to talk about, one thing that I love that UFC does is the 5 rounds for championships, because to me, if you're going to do a championship fight and you're going to get to where scoring is part of it, it needs to be an odd number. It really bugs me in boxing. We have 12 rounds, because how many times you watch a boxing and it's a draw? It's a draw when it's a really good fight, and I always think that it should be either 11 or 13 rounds. Make up your mind, go with that. But that is one thing that I think they do very well with the odd number of rounds, because I think that works out better. It gives you a winner and a loser more definitively, and there you go. But it was a really good match, I would say, and hopefully they will do a rematch. I've read that they really want to put Griffin and Liddell together, as that would be a very, and I agree, that would probably be a big time money wise match, as Griffin is so popular and Liddell is Liddell, so that would be big time in my opinion. So Jax is probably on the outside looking in. I've always kind of felt, since he first became kind of big in the UFC, that UFC never really got behind Jackson until they had to get behind him, and so I would be surprised if they're not going to be in a rush to give him a return match, though he's injured at the moment, so it really is neither here nor there, and he might not be back until he would be able to actually get a rematch anyways, and between Liddell or Griffin, if that match takes place. But that's neither here or there. That's farther down the road. Anyways, what I actually want to talk about is, probably some of you have heard about this if you're big MMA fans, is that there was like a meeting where they talked about rule changes in MMA, and a lot of it is technical stuff that really doesn't matter. The constant argument about elbows and knee strikes that always goes on in MMA, and what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. Apparently they did decide that smothering, i.e. smothering a guy's face and mouth and nose, should be banned, and I agree with that, even though, when I first saw it back in the day and guys were doing that, I thought it was cool, because you're like, oh look, he's being smart. But now it's gotten to the point where it drags down a match, makes a match just kind of slow. This is something that would make the match a little more entertaining, and ultimately you do have to kind of, the business side of it, you do have to kind of judge that, and that's something that you can change. That while I'm sure die-hard MMA people will be, oh, well, that should be part of it, you also have to look at it that it does make it boring at times, and I think it's something you can easily take out that's not going to, totally sell out the sport. But the other big thing that they talked about was the fact of adding more weight classes, and lots more, to the point of going up to 14 weight classes for men, 10 for women. Not that anyone probably really cares about women. I do, because I actually do like some of the women who fight. But 14 weight classes in MMA is absolutely stupid. You don't need any more than maybe 10. I would say 7 is more than enough. You know, that's how many you have in both Olympic wrestling styles, and I believe in judo as well. Also has 7 weight classes. And while, you know, MMA is not particularly like those, I think you can still keep with 7. You know, the people that like more weight classes, what they usually say is the reason why is because you're more weight classes, guys don't have to starve themselves to get weight to be in for a fight. And my thing with that is that's bunk, because guys still do it. You know, watching boxing, and I am a boxing fan, I do like boxing, that's always been the case. Guys starve themselves to get it within a weight because then they can balloon up, which they always do, and they have an advantage. They do it in collegiate wrestling, they do it in in Olympic wrestling, they do it in Greco-Roman wrestling, they do it in any type of sport where you have weight classes. This is a common practice, and it has been for a long time. If you really wanted to go, you know, and if you really wanted to combat the weight loss and the starvation thing, what you would do is you would actually be proactive. MMA has gotten where it is because they've been proactive in saying, okay, this is what the fans don't like about boxing, so let's do, and since we are compared to an extent to boxing as a sport, not as a business, I'm going to get to that, we should do the things that people think boxing should be doing. This is one of those things when it comes to weight classes, is either A, do same day weigh-ins, which they're not going to do because, you know, you use the weigh-ins as a way to promote the show, or put in rules which state that you cannot, you know, depending on the weight class, you can't gain X amount of pounds. If you gain X amount of pounds, you forfeit your prize money, you forfeit your purse, the whole thing. Now, promoters aren't big on that because they don't want to have fights be canceled spur of the moment like that, and that's unfortunate. But if you're going to say that you are in a sport, there are things like that you have to put up with, such as that, you know, failed drug tests, that sort of thing. We always see. Day of the fight, you know, some people would say that's a little early, but if a promoter is doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is if he's checking in on a fighter, particularly a big name fighter, and he's going, okay, make sure that you're in weight, and you're going to dock guys and make guys pay for literally missing their weights. That means also fining guys. The sports commission, or the fighting commissions, or the boxing commissions, whichever state they call it, actually, you know, fining guys for missing weight. That would be beneficial as well, and actually force guys to watch what they were doing. If you did that, if you were more proactive, okay, all of these people that continually say boxing's a sport, MMA is just human cockfighting, it would shut them up, because now they're doing the very thing that people have been saying boxing should have been doing for at least 10 years now, and some people would even say longer. MMA does its best when it's proactive about stuff like this. But there's this mindset, and I've talked about this in the other 2 videos, of if boxing does it, we need to do it because that's what we have to be as boxing. No, you need to be different than boxing. The reason why MMA has gotten popular is because it's not boxing, because it has gone against boxing. And to UFC's credit and to Zuffa's credit, they basically have said the weight class thing is a joke, and they're not going to abide by it because, you know, there's 7 weight classes, and both of their promotions work, and I do think they work, and I think they're great, and I think that that's probably what they need to be at. So it's one of those things where it just amazes me, because you would think that people would get that this is not boxing, and that the promoters in particular would try to drill into some of these people's heads that we're not boxing, and we don't need to be compared to boxing, and we need to do things that boxing is not doing. We need to be proactive. We need to do the things that people say, hey, this is something wrong in boxing. Okay, if that's something wrong in boxing, let's basically be proactive about it and say, look, you say this is something you don't like about boxing, well, that's something we fixed, or that's something that we don't do. You know, it's one of those things where it's one of my big pet peeves, and it has been for a long time with MMA. As MMA has grown, is they continually just seem to be wanting to go down the same path as boxing, and if you do that, basically you're going to have the same problems boxing has, with so many weight classes, because you have so many. In boxing, while you don't have, you know, one organization stronger than another. You do have 3 or 4, depending on how you want to look at it, major boxing organizations around the world. They all pretty much work within each other for the most part. Their politics and promoting gets in the way. You have so many champions and you have so many weight classes that, you know, how many people? I mean, how many people can actually name every champion? I mean, you're talking what I would say at least 4, at the minimum 40 champions that people probably couldn't name, depending on which belts you wanted to say are legitimate belts and which ones weren't. That's too many. That's way too many. If you just took it down to, and there's more than that, because there's 15 or 16 weight divisions, depending on the weight divisions you want to add and not add, and boxing. I mean, come on, just do the math. It's ridiculous. It's one of the big problems with boxing, and in MMA you don't have that because the organizations are stronger and guys are, you know, pretty much signed in to the organizations. It's more pro wrestling in that extent, business-wise, that they don't need to be doing this. And I think the fact that the athletic commissions think this is a good idea, I think is just stupid. And I'm glad that UFC and all of that are not going to follow it, because it's one of those things where I always look at it and I'm like, what are you doing? More weight classes is actually a bad thing, and for a lot of reasons. The big reason being, as I said, the people that say that, you know, it helps guys, keeps guys healthy. That's not true. It's not true at all. People who actually follow boxing, follow MMA, follow any type of sport where weight is a factor and you have weight classes will tell you that it doesn't matter. And the other thing is that it allows guys to hide in weight classes. You don't get the marquee fights because guys are fighting over, okay, well, you're going to come down in weight, or I'm going to come up in weight, or, you know, what are you going to do? And it just doesn't work. It allows guys to hold titles for long periods of time who should, not that they're not great fighters, but they're not good fighters, and they're not forced to take on guys because they're in a weak division, where if you would have less guys, less weight divisions, that guy probably wouldn't hold a belt. He probably wouldn't have the power he would, and his, you know, and promoters love using that as kind of leverage. And it's just one of those things that just makes me always shake my head and go, what the hell is going on? But I just wanted to come on and talk about that because it is one of those things that really bugs me, particularly in boxing. And again, it's one of those things where I just see MMA going down that line, that road that boxing goes down, and it just really kind of hurts me in a lot of ways, because I'm always like, you know, you guys got where you were because you were not boxing. You wanted to be different with boxing. You looked like you were listening to fans, and you're trying to do everything different, all the stuff that boxing said they wouldn't do. And I think one of the things that really would give them good pub as well would be really, you know, coming up with good weight restrictions and basically saying either A, like I said, doing same day, same day weigh-ins, which I think that's unrealistic, like I said, because you use the weigh-ins as a promotion tools, and I don't think promoters are willing to get away with that. Maybe they are, though, I don't know. Or, you know, like I said, actually say, okay, you weigh in, now, you know, you can only gain up to so many pounds leading up to the fight, and if you gain more than that, well, you're out of luck. And I think if you went that way, I think it would be good. I think it would send the right message. I think guys would follow it, first of all, especially if you enforced it. That's the big thing. You have to enforce it. You know, and the promoters have to be on board with it. And I think they would. I think that if you sold it in that way of, this is a way to help grow the sport, I really think that people would get on board with it and it would work. That's all for this one. Kind of talked a little longer about this than I wanted to, but that's okay. I will check you guys later, and have a good one.